Good day and welcome to another edition of One-on-One with Swope Health. I am your host, Eric Wesson. Thanks so much for joining us for this fabulous program we've got today. We're going to be talking about reparations and what that means and what that looks like and what exactly is it about reparations that we understand and don't understand. So joining us today is Ms. Janay Reliford. She is the chair of the Kansas City Reparations Coalition,
yes,
which is different than the commission. Janay, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so what's the difference between the coalition and the commission?
So the difference is the mayor's commission is who is responsible for coming up with proposals that will close the wealth gap.
Mm-hmm.
The coalition is the body who helped to usher in the commission.
Mm-hmm.
So the coalition started its work in 2020, led by the National Black United Front of Kansas City. They put out the call to many Black-led organizations to assemble this coalition. We started out by creating subcommittees to create a document that would cover the 5 areas we're focused on, which are healthcare, education, housing, business and economics, and criminal justice. So we broke ourselves up into those groups and we documented what we felt harms, the injuries were, who may be responsible, and what remedies may look like. And that is the information that was used to create the ordinance that seated the commission.
Okay, so when we talk about what it looks like, I think most people are focused on that financial aspect of it. What I hear from people that don't look like us is we getting ready to write Black people all these checks. And what about this group of people and this group of people? And they were discriminated against. But reparations, my understanding and looking at it from an academic point of view, is for Black people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, other groups have gotten reparations, so why not Black people?
Okay.
It's past time, so now is the time.
Okay. So since we're here at Swope, and Swope is a healthcare provider in the community, I wanted to make sure that we tie all of those things in together. So what are some of the health disparities that the coalition and the commission might come up with that need to be addressed?
There are disparities, of course, in all 5 of those areas that we're focusing on.
Mm-hmm.
And the commission, it is their charge, and they will be accompanied by, researchers that will help them get to the exact disparities here in Kansas City, because that's our focus locally. What is the disparities in health, which we know that, Black people are predisposed to so many different ailments, really because of the environmental conditions in our communities. We live in food deserts. So that is a contributing factor to the disparities of health. Our mental condition, because of the oppression throughout the generations, that is a factor. When it comes to health, education, our schools are substandard. You go to suburban schools and you see their, elementary and high schools look like college campuses. Mm-hmm. Why don't we get that in the urban core? So across the board, criminal justice, as you know, we're in mass incarceration era.
Mm-hmm.
So just business, we're at the bottom. Housing, we're at the bottom. So that's unacceptable, and it's time for an investment. It's time for reparations for Black people to bring us up to par, which will uplift the entire city.
Okay. I sometimes do a television program, and it's a cross breed of people on the panel. And one of the things that Pete Mundo and I differ in is education. And I told him when I was in school, we had duct tape on our books, we had scotch tape on our books, and then when you go across town, you would find those kids with new books, and then when they would wear their books out, they would come over into the urban core to the classrooms. And so people don't understand the significance when we talk about that. I think we had to go into a court proceeding in order to get classrooms that had air conditions, that had windows, because a lot of times they were boarded up to a degree. So it's very important that when we talk about education and that educational gap. Kansas City Public Schools hasn't had a levy in 40, 50 years. So that gap in education keeps us out of various positions that we would want to go into. So economic development, is that part of that as well?
Absolutely, it has to be. Business and economics, that's one of our focuses. One of the, wealth generators is business. We know property, land, that's, probably the highest form of wealth building. But, we have to have an infusion of support, investment for blacks to own businesses. And those of us who already do own businesses, we need help.
Staying in business.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So you're born and raised in Kansas City?
Born and raised.
And so most people will know you from Ad Hoc, your years at Ad Hoc. So
Yes.
Where did you go to school at?
I did my undergrad, so I have a social work degree. I did my undergrad with CMSU and Longview, 2+2 program. And then I got my master's in social work with KU.
What about high school?
Westport, class of 94.
What about elementary school?
Okay, Faxon Elementary. That was one of Bland High. No, that was one of my children's elementary schools. But Faxon is one of the main ones. I pretty much went to elementary school my whole time there. 6th grade is when I went to a different school. I was kind of traumatized in the 6th grade, so that's why I'm drawing a blank on the name of the school.
And most of the schools that we went to when we were growing up, they don't even exist anymore. Like you said, Westport.
Wendell Phillips. That's what
Phillips.
it was. Yes.
You must have been traumatized when I remember that one. So how did you get so involved in this struggle and this conversation?
Well, being a social worker and just being so passionate about issues in the community as I've grown in this city, and I see the disparities. I experience the disparities. And, at the heart of a social worker wants to do something about it. So for many years, I've advocated for change in the community and volunteered in many different circles. I started my own youth camp to try to make a difference in the lives of young people, to help them make better choices to navigate the oppression. So, yeah, I just have a heart to make things better for people.
So do you think that this conversation will expand people's education on the subject?
I certainly hope so. We had a public meeting last night, the Reparations Coalition. We meet the last Monday of the month at 6 p.m. via Zoom, and it was a great meeting where we were able to share with attendees about our history and where we go from here. And we need the support of the community. So those are opportunities for them to connect with us and share their thoughts about reparations and what they want to see.
So that dialogue gets people educated and a broader understanding of what reparations is all about.
Yes, there is so much more educating to do, because there is a lot of division and misunderstanding. And so I think that once people really understand exactly what reparations is, that it is specifically for Black people because we were the ones harmed. So yes, there's oppression in other ethnic groups, and all of that should be eradicated. But now is our time to focus on our plight, and focusing on the plight of reparations for Black people is going to uplift, those harms that were created with other. When we're talking about eradicating oppression for Black people, that should absolutely eradicate oppression for everyone.
So what do you say when people say, well, you had affirmative action, you let you go to college. You got several degrees. And what's the other one I hear? Oh, yeah. Well, we're not too divided. We elected Barack Obama as president. So that way it shows you got several black billionaires. So y'all doing all right. Y'all don't need reparations. What do you say to people that come up with that conversation?
Yeah, absolutely not. First of all, affirmative action wasn't specifically for black people. And if you do some research on it, really the main population that has benefited from affirmative action is white women. Mm-hmm. So that was for minorities, not specifically for black people. And with Obama, I think his presidency really opened the country's eyes more widely about the racism that actually exists. Mm-hmm. Still exists in America and still in 2023.
And then you followed him up with somebody else that did something totally different. So that is true. So what are some of the things that you want people to take away from it? We just talked about several things that show a difference. So when you're having these meetings, what do you want people to take away from them?
Hope. Because there are still so many people that believe that reparations is impossible. So we want them to have hope that this is real and it is going to happen, and for them to get engaged to ensure that the way it's disseminated is actually going to close the wealth gap. Because you made a comment about, most people, they want to check. Right. Which absolutely, I agree that some checks should be cut. But that shouldn't be the only form of reparations, because we do want to ensure that it makes a significant impact. The investment makes a significant impact. And I'm afraid if we just get written checks, we may just give that right back to the system. So we want to definitely be strategic about it, and we want to have investments in education and business and things like that will ensure that we're actually going to level up.
Okay. It's been so great having you here to explain this portion. We're going to shift now over to one of the people that are on the commission. And thanks so much for joining us. It's a pleasure. You are watching One-on-One with Swope Health. I am your host, Eric Wesson. Joining us for the second segment of the show is a man that needs absolutely no introduction. He is Mickey Dean. He wears so many hats, I can't even keep track of all of them. Mr. Dean, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Eric, for having us.
So when we get to the next phase, you are actually on the commission.
Let me clarify. I am what is known as ex officio on the commission.
Okay.
One of the things that we pressed the mayor was that a lot of people on the commission are there for their expertise in certain areas. They don't really have broad knowledge of the area of reparations. And so we wanted advisors from the coalition on the commission to make sure that the commissioners understood what reparations were, what they were not, and to make sure that they stayed on task, and also to offer our assistance to the commission in any way. So myself and Reverend Esther Hosendorf were named as, we call ourselves advisors. They use the term ex officio members of the commission. So that's really my relationship to the commission.
Okay.
I'm not a voting member.
Okay. But you're just there to guide and kind of give them a format and understanding of what reparations is and what it is not.
Right. And because of the fact that we have extensive ties to the reparations movement around the country, we are connected to all of the other commissions that exist in the country, and so we want to make sure that our commission takes advantage of all of the things that's taking place in the other commissions. Keep in mind that this notion of local reparations is really relatively new. It only really started about 2 or 3 years ago. So all the commissions are kind of finding their way. Some are more advanced than others, and what we're trying to do is learn from each other. So we have a nationwide network of all of the cities and municipalities that are doing local commissions, and so we want to make sure that our commission takes advantage of that knowledge, and we don't have to start from scratch on everything.
So what is reparations and what is not reparations?
Well, I think the key to understanding reparations is the root word is repair. And the idea is to repair the damage that have been done to black people really since our time in this country. A lot of people focus on the period of enslavement, in which is necessary because of the fact that the all of the wealth that was generated through slave labor that we didn't get paid for. The initial accumulation of capital in this country was basically through slave labor. And it was not only beneficial to the South, but also to the North, because a lot of the cotton, for example, was processed in the North. The North financed a lot of the slave trade. They provided a lot of the insurance. But in addition to that, after a brief period of Reconstruction, we entered the Jim Crow period. And during the Jim Crow period, of course, black folks were continued to be oppressed, continued to be brutalized, and we were left out of the ability to create wealth during that time. So the repairing the damage goes beyond just enslavement, but the damage that has been occurring to black people from that point up to this point. So and what's not reparations is basically the regular policy that we see that tends to at least it's for the supposedly for the benefit of uplifting black people, affirmative action, diversity and inclusion, even civil rights laws. Those things are part of regular public policy. And there's been a lot of estimates, depending on who you look at, that if all we do from this point forward is regular public policy, it would take black people about 270 or 80 years to close the wealth gap between black and white. So most of us don't have that much time. So the fact is that there has to be some massive intervention in order to really close that wealth gap. And that the intervention is really only reparations and reparatory justice. So that's what reparations are not.
Okay. So one of the things that I talked about with Janay earlier was the impact of it overall. So specifically in Kansas City, what will be the areas that we can look forward to the commission addressing?
Well, the commission is going to address all 5 of those areas, and they're going to put forward proposals for reparatory justice in all 5 of those areas. Now, one of the things that we understand
What's reparatory justice?
Basically, the proposals for in each one of those areas to make black people equal in each of those areas. So basically to eliminate the barriers in each of those areas for black people's achievement. So that's what we call reparatory justice.
Okay, go ahead.
So one of the things that we understand is that the primary responsibility for reparations for black people in this country is the federal government. The federal government is really the only body that really has the resources to do that. But what we understand is that in each city, there are institutions in each city that have contributed to the oppression of black people in that particular city. So we're going to be looking at all of those different areas to determine what they might be able to contribute towards reparatory justice. But because this is a mayor's commission, it's really focusing on the city's role. And the city really has played a role practically in all of those areas, but right now the goal of the commission is to hold the city accountable. Okay,
so when we look at city policies and procedures, we got redlining, J.C. Nichols and his real estate. We've got education. We've got healthcare as well. And so in the healthcare aspect of it, General Hospital, we were regulated there. 18th Street. Yeah. I remember, when 18th Street was a vibrant economic base. It was like Black Wall Street here in Kansas City. Then, of course, came the Blue Ridge Mall, and it kind of watered down from there.
Let me add that, now I didn't grow up here, but there's a lot of research that has been done on the history of Kansas City, basically in all of those areas. And one of the reasons that we wanted to have people on the commission who had expertise in those areas is that they would be in the best position to dig up that history and really see exactly what happened. I've read a couple of books on Kansas City history, and it's been very enlightening to me in terms of just some of the policies that really came from city government that really helped create a lot of the segregation, a lot of the disparities between black and white. So the commission's role is really to dig up all of that information, to find out who's responsible and how do we repair that. To the extent that we can, as a city. And city government can only do so much. We understand that. But the goal of the commission is to put those proposals in front of the city government, and then let them decide how to deal with it.
One of the areas that I noticed was missing in that conversation, and I kind of grit my teeth on it, and that's the media. Mm-hmm. And the media's role in helping to promote segregation mm-hmm. and the things that were discriminated against. And one of the things that I learned in my researching was when I was with the call didn't get real estate ads. They didn't mm-hmm. get car advertising. Mm-hmm. They didn't even get advertising from the city until like the mid 60s, help mm-hmm. wanted ads mm-hmm. and those kind of things. And so it did damage to all the black media outlets. I think at one point in time, there were like 15 black newspapers on 18th Street alone, and none of them could survive because there was no economic base for them to operate on.
Well, let me say this. We identified 5 key areas, but there are other areas that we could have looked at, media being one of them. Environmental justice is another
one,
because that's a major issue in the black community. I think politics, political voting rights, those kind of things. So there are just a lot of areas where black people have been damaged. But we sort of took a cue from the national reparations movement in identifying the critical areas, and not that those others are not critical, but these are the 5 areas that, if you look at most of the commissions around the country, those are the ones that they're focusing on.
Which commission around the country do you think has been the most successful?
Well, the only one to date that is actually providing reparations is Evanston, Illinois. Mm-hmm. And Robin Ruth Simmons, who was the councilwoman who sponsored that legislation there, she led a successful effort. And right now, they've started to pay what they consider to be reparations, $25,000. Initially, it was focused on housing. The eligible recipients would get $25,000 either to make a down payment on a home or to improve their home. But now it's either that or they can get $25,000 in cash. But that's the one that has had the most success. Now we know about the state of California. They've produced a 500-page document documenting the harms from the state of California, and I believe they have their final meeting on the 29th of this month, and then they're going to present their findings to the state legislature, and everybody's watching to see what happens with that.
Because I think San Francisco was like $5 million.
San Francisco, they also did one, I think, and I think a lot of people just sort of lost it over this, but I think they said that each eligible black person would receive $8 million or something like that. Keep in mind, and this is one of the things that we told our commission, their job is to determine the damage and calculate what that damage is. Now, their goal is not to figure out where this money is going to come from.
Right.
Their goal is basically to calculate the damage and to put that on the table, and then the responsible parties will go from there. So the damage is tremendous. If you look at the wealth gap in this country, I think the wealth gap between black and white is something like 10-1. In Kansas City, the average white family has a wealth of about $184,000. Black family is about $24,000. That's right here in Kansas City. So how do you make that up? Well, yeah, it's a tremendous wealth gap, and it's going to be costly. But the goal of the commission is basically to do that type of calculation, and that's why they have experts that will be working with them.
Okay, so I want to rewind, and I want you to repeat. I watched you on the video with the group from PBS and the other group. And one of the things you said that was like so profound, and I was like, I've been thinking the same thing with that. And that is when it comes to, and you just mentioned it, where are we going to get the money from? And it's not the coalition's responsibility to find that. But I thought about something that you said when you talked about using our tax dollars to do things. I don't know anything about a war between Russia and anybody, and why am I and they sending billions of dollars over there for that war. So what do you say to people? It's like, what, I don't want my tax money used for that.
Well, I think that if you ask any taxpayer, and if you were able to show them where their tax money goes, there are going to be a number of things that they're not going to agree with, and they wouldn't want that if they had a choice. They wouldn't want their tax money to go to. So the same as this. I mean, this is a wrong that was created by our government, and it has to be repaired by our government, and of course that's tax dollars. And it probably is, this country can raise money when it wants, and that's one of the reasons that we have an economist on the commission, Dr. Tauheed, who's on the commission, is an economist, and they can really explain how this government raises money and how the city raises money, and how that can be manipulated. But again, that's really not the responsibility of the commission to determine where this money is going to come from. We just want them to identify and calculate the damage.
And you're absolutely correct. And it seems to me, and just I'm on the outside looking in, but when they want money for various projects, they'll tell me and you if we want money for something, or we don't have money for that. But when they want various projects, they suddenly find money to do those projects. So they suddenly should find money to help repair damage that they were a part of causing. Do you think a lot of the money should come from the federal government, though?
Well, as far as the overall reparations movement, that is the responsibility of the federal government. And the federal government has numerous ways of raising money, ways of printing money. There are a lot of issues involved, with this cause inflation and et cetera. But overall, the truth of the matter is that when you have one segment of the population that is oppressed, it brings down the entire city. And what we're trying to explain to people, particularly white people who oppose reparations, is that if you uplift black people and really other oppressed people, it's going to benefit the whole of Kansas City.
Absolutely.
In the final analysis.
It's just like crime. A lot of people think that crime is in this certain area, it's not affecting them, but it spills over into all parts of the city. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having
us. I wish you well on your endeavors with this. And for those who don't know, Mickey Dean is with the Black United Front. He was with the city's Human Relations Department for a number of years, and he is a longtime community advocate. As always, I have the greatest viewing audience in the world. Till next week, remember, tough times don't last, tough people do. Until next time, peace.